Today on the show, Donald Trump's presidency is causing people to cross party lines, and that is a very good thing. Plus, we discuss the elements of the perfect nap.
Can't you see? Everyone! They're here already! You're next!
Let's go!
Welcome to the future, where the glass is half full and you'll need new glasses, where you'll be jumping from conclusions.
The past is annulled, and a new future is born!
Never before in history has so much meant so little to so many. AD on the radio.
So the kid sat there with his head in his hands, bemoaning his critical mistake, his crucial error, the incredibly wrong decision he felt he'd made on the first day of school. Well, it wasn't really the first day of school, it was his first day of school, the day he got to our school. And this is a kid who was given a hard way to go by teachers. This is a kid who had the worst assumed about him a lot. And this is a kid who'd just been punished, and he felt unfairly punished by our math teacher. Probably about the 9th grade. I seem to remember this happening. And he'd gotten there maybe a year or two earlier, in the 7th or 8th. And the critical error in judgment he felt like he'd made was the lunch table he sat at. It was interesting because now, thinking back on it, I think this would probably be totally illegal and our principal would get in all sorts of trouble for it. But he said, I made a mistake. When I first got here, our principal told me, don't hang out with this crowd of kids. Hang out with this crowd of kids. He was told to avoid this sort of like, I don't know, hard partying crowd, I suppose you'd call them. We sort of call them the cool kids in a lot of ways. They were the first to have alcohol at high school parties. They were the first to get into all sorts of trouble. Not bad, just kind of, I don't know, the more aggressive side of kids being kids. And he'd been warned away from them before he'd even set foot on school grounds. He was one of those kids that showed up in the middle of the year. And I don't know if you've ever been the new kid at a school in the middle of the year, but you're immediately faced with a big social decision the moment you encounter the lunchroom. And this guy was bemoaning his choice that he made on the first day that he arrived at school in the lunchroom. Girls like this guy. He was a little taller, a little bigger than the rest of us. He was good at sports. He checked, I guess, enough boxes for the female population of our school to take an immediate interest in him the moment he showed up. So he was told to hang out with this one group of sort of, I guess, sportier, more upright students. But he walked into the lunchroom, he said, and he's like, that one girl said, come and sit with us. What do you do when a pretty girl says, come sit with you and you're in the 9th grade? You go sit with a pretty girl. You're like, result, I'm off to a good start. 9th grade in new school, not bad. But unbeknownst to him, that girl was sitting at the table of kids that our principal had told him to avoid. And he felt just like that. He joined a tribe that he couldn't really get out of. People judge you based on the company you keep. And ultimately, the people around you are going to raise or lower your internal bar. So you're going to start to act out like them, behave in a manner that is similar to them. You're going to become one of those people. And he sort of did, but not really. He wasn't a bad kid. He wasn't a rebellious kid. He acted up a little bit, but he didn't do any of the things that those kids did. But because of his decision to go sit at a table where a pretty girl said, hey, come and sit with me, in the 9th grade, he felt he had been unfairly tarred with a certain brush. People made assumptions about who he was, and there was no getting out of him for the entirety of his high school career, he felt. And because of that, he was unfairly persecuted by teachers. You were associated with a gang of kids that were known for being trouble, known for being a bunch of cut-ups, known for being rule breakers. And because of that, our math teacher had just come down on him really hard. And he was like, I made a mistake. I made a mistake. I was told by the principal to go hang out with these kids. And what did I do the first day I was here? The first day I was here, I fell in with a wrong crowd, and I've been paying for it ever since. And I never really gave it any thought like that. But I was shocked. I was shocked at how damaging and limiting this tribalism, even in high school, was for this kid. And it's a thought that I go back to more and more as an adult in the year 2018. But I think there's something interesting and positive happening right now. And honestly, it's because of Donald Trump. Love him or hate him, it's because of him. And I think there could be an upside to this situation.
Real radio.
104.1.
Where the left and right come together for fundamental truths. AD on the radio, on Twitter at ADSXE.
So, you and I have spent a good chunk of the last couple of years talking about the limiting nature of party politics. This idea that you have to be a registered this or that to be able to participate in the primary is just, well, it's wrong. And it's unbelievable to me that in America, a country founded on the idea of individual liberty, to participate in our democratic process, you must be a freaking joiner. Check your individualism at the door, register yourself as something, and then and only then are you allowed to participate in this integral part of our political process. It's just so unbelievably wrong on so many levels, and it's just one of those things that we, as Americans, have been conditioned to accept. Okay, I'll just vote straight ticket this, I'll vote straight ticket that. But it goes back. I don't know what it is. As much as we're a country founded on the idea of individual liberty, there's safety in numbers, I suppose. There's safety in tribes. There's safety in groups and bunches and like-minded people. And well, that's why we have party politics. That's why we have all these things, I suppose, to spare people some discomfort. It's tough being out there on your own. It's tough being an individual. It's tough not falling in with a clique of people. It's tough not being easily defined, not being easy to relate to. It's tough when people can't put you in a box. Tough for them, and it's tough for you because of it. So what do? We as a society go, well, I guess I'm a Republican, so I'm just going to vote this. I guess I'm a Democrat, I'm just going to vote that. And, I kind of sort of understand it going back to our conversation about this kid that I went to school with. I remember in the 9th grade, him bemoaning the fact that he fell in with a crowd that he wished he hadn't fallen in with on his very first day of school. He made a decision. You remember the politics of the lunchroom? Which kid were you going to sit with? Which group of kids were you going to sit with? Were they the varsity Letterman jacket types? Or were they the denim jacket with back patches and bullet belt types? Concert t-shirts and Doc Marten boots? Or very well put together, having just come from the shopping mall? By the way, the idea of the shopping mall is dying out, and with it, a certain amount of teenage tribalism as well. That's a conversation for a different day. But you remember the politics of the lunchroom. Who are you going to sit with? People are going to judge you based on who you're going to sit with. Maybe you wanted to sit with this group of kids, but they weren't having you, so you were relegated to that group of kids. And you felt weird for being a social climber, but there was this idea that you wanted to sit at the popular kids table. And I never got that. I never understood it. And I actually divorced myself from the idea of groups when I was in high school, because I found it to be too limiting. I couldn't deal with you're sitting with those kids, therefore you're that type of person. I remember when I used to walk into the lunchroom, hey, come and sit with us. Oh, okay. And then there were a group of people that would feel like, oh, he's sitting with them, not with us. Guess he thinks he's pretty cool. Or guess he's not as cool as we thought he was. And I found it to be so stupid and so limiting that eventually I just started excusing myself from the lunchroom, and I would go to the music room and I'd practice drums, and eventually I would give drum lessons. And, I kind of decided I didn't need the cliques. I didn't need to be a joiner. I didn't need to be a part of a group. I was just trying to get on with my own life. But I had to kind of take a stand. I had to kind of say, I will not be defined by my lunchroom table sitting choices. And it's weird. It made me a little less relatable to every single last one of the kids I went to school with. So it starts early. It starts early, this idea of tribalism, this idea of we've got to be able to identify who you are and what you think at 50 paces based on who you're sitting with, based on the types of clothes you're wearing, based on what you're talking about, based on how you spend your weekends. People want to be able to put you in a box because it's comfortable, but it is so unbelievably limiting. And every time you are willing to be lumped in with another group of folks, you are giving up a teeny little piece of that individual liberty that this country was founded on. And we've been giving up a lot of that recently. I mean, it is in the politicians' benefit to have us sit at separate tables. The nerds, the jocks, the burnouts. It's a good idea to keep all these people separate. It's a good idea to keep all these folks from talking to each other and relating to each other too much, because if you get that sort of intermingling between them, well, we're going to have to work a lot harder for votes the moment they start sharing ideas, the moment they start realizing that they're not so freaking different. We are going to have to do more than appeal to their knee-jerk sense of loyalty to get them to donate money to our campaigns and to get them to vote for us. To be divided is to be conquered. And we've been conquered a lot by our political process, more and more in the last 10 years than any time, I think, in history. The digital world that was supposed to bring us closer together has, in fact, allowed people to dig deeper divides between us. It's an interesting one. Apartheid lasted for so long in South Africa, and it seems unbelievable that this would be the case, only because, well, it was a bunch of white people who are completely outnumbered by black people, yet somehow the white people are in power telling black people what they can and cannot do. How on earth was this accomplished? We'll get into it next.
For more stimulation and less irritation, 9 out of 10 doctors choose KPRC AM 950, Houston's more stimulating talk radio.
Don't get the blues, get all the news. We mean all of you guys out there in Radio Land. All aboard!
He's back. AD on the radio.
Give it up, yeah. Give it up, yeah. Bring this on, come on, come on.
So that divisive, limiting sense of tribalism that we first encounter in the middle school lunchroom when we're making the decision about which kid we're going to sit with. You decide you're going to hang out with one bunch of kids, and like my friend back in the day, people judge you on that decision for the rest of the time you're in school. It's crazy. Crazy how a day's decision can limit years of your life, as my friend found out. If you're just joining us, we were talking about this kid I went to school with. He was told by our principal, don't hang out with these kids, hang out with these more sort of sporty and upright individuals. They'll steer you right. Don't hang out with the troublemakers. Well, he walked into the lunchroom. A pretty girl said to him, hey, you want to come and sit with us? And he went, yeah, I do. Result. First day of the 9th grade, and I'm already been asked to sit at a table by a pretty girl. This is great. But what he didn't realize was that table is occupied by the exact individuals that our high school principal, in a move that would probably get him so fired now, had told him to avoid. And just like that, He was judged. He was judged by the students around him, and he was judged by the teachers around him. He was thought immediately to be a troublemaker, and he was treated as such. And he felt like he went through school being unfairly disciplined by teachers who came down unnecessarily hard on him because they thought he was part of this bunch of kids that were out to create trouble. And he said, that one decision, he told me not to do it, and I did it, and now I'm stuck with it. Incredibly limiting stuff, right? And you'd think it's incredibly limiting stuff that we would leave behind once we got into adulthood. But no. Gets worse, gets more exacerbated, gets more extreme the older we get. The idea of party politics, the idea that you cannot participate in the primaries unless you are registered something or other, unless you are a mindless joiner. And look, if you're registered as something, I'm not saying you're a mindless joiner, but a prerequisite for being part of an integral part of our political process is that you declare yourself something that's easy for everybody else to understand. I.e. mindless joiner is what they want you to be, whether you are or not. So it's this incredibly limiting thing. And it makes it easy for politicians to pit us against each other. The more divided we stay, the less we talk to one another, the more they win. The less questions we ask about policy and campaign finance and what they're going to do with our vote if elected. The less accountability they have, the more they're allowed to say, these people are coming for your way of life, your freedom, everything that you hold dear. Don't talk to them. They're dangerous. I will protect them for you, but it's going to take some cash and a vote. To be divided is to be conquered, and American politicians have been conquering us more and more every year for the last decade, ever since the dawning of the digital age. The digital age is an interesting one because it was supposed to bring us closer together. It was supposed to bridge gaps of language and understanding and color and race and society. And instead, it sort of allowed us to become very divided. Part of that is the fault of the folks at Google and Facebook. I've told you about this before, right? Google and Facebook are so busy trying to predict what it is that you like and try and sell you stuff that they are limiting your view of the world. And it's this experiment that I tried with me and an Egyptian buddy of mine. I was like, hold on, let's try this. I've heard this is a thing. I'm going to Google Egypt and see what comes up. And you Google Egypt and see what comes up. So I did and he did. We whipped out our respective phones, Googled Egypt, and I got beheadings and terror, and you don't want to go there because you're going to die, and Muslim Brotherhood and all this sort of stuff. My buddy, who's Egyptian, got flight deals and hotels, and this is a really nice spa. This sense of division these tribes that we're put into have become exacerbated by the digital age and the digital age's desire to sell us stuff predictively online. And politicians have been quick to capitalize on that, realizing, oh man, there's even less of a chance that they're going to talk to each other and share ideas now. This is going to be cake. No one's going to ask us questions. They're just going to vote, and all we got to do is collect those votes and it'll be good to go. Do you see where we're going with all this? This unhealthy division that allows us to be beaten at every turn by checking our individualism at the door? And like we were saying, South Africa is a perfect example of this. Apartheid put black people into an incredibly yet legally diminished position in South Africa. Now you do the math and you go, hey, there's a lot more there's a lot more black people than white people in South Africa. So how is it that the white people have the power? How come the people that vastly outnumber them, the black people in South Africa, just don't go, BS, there's more of us than you. We're just going to live our lives. Thanks very much. We don't need your permission to do the things that we want to do. We are not going to be legally diminished by the system that is apartheid. So how'd this happen? It's very simple. Division, tribalism. Tribes in South Africa were pitted against each other. And the people that kind of came up with the concept of apartheid realized that as long as we can keep these folks fighting with each other, they're not going to come after us. And that's exactly what happened for years and years and years until finally they went, hold on, this is garbage. We have a common enemy here. Let's put aside our differences and go live our best life, shall we? But for years, apartheid existed. And the reason apartheid existed was because of the architects of apartheid realized that division was the way that they were going to keep a much larger number of people under their thumb. And if you think that what happens in America with politics is all that different, no, you're wrong. And so, for that reason, wherever I get an opportunity to do it, I tell people, especially folks that believe different things than each other, to hang out, talk, get to know each other. Because the one thing that prejudice cannot stand up to is contact. Contact breaks down prejudice. You know, I've talked about this a lot, but it's important, so it bears repeating. My family's from the Northeast, and if you walk outside of your house in the Northeast, all the way sort of from New York City up to Maine, I suppose, is where my family's from. If you walk outside your front door and go, I'm a liberal Democrat, there's a very good chance that someone else will go, I'm a liberal Democrat too, isn't it great? Then I spent 10 years in Houston, Texas, a city that I dearly love, where I still spend a lot of my time, and the exact polar opposite was true. You could walk out of your house and go, guns, no Obama, and be met with a rousing chorus of guns, no Obama. And, you know, there's nothing wrong with a bunch of people that believe the same thing hanging out with each other. It's comforting. But it's a little bit different to another place where I wound up spending a lot of time, San Diego. San Diego's an interesting spot because it's hippy-dippy, sprout-eating, tree-hugging, faux food for the tofu-intolerant California. But in it, you've got plunked down a large military contingent. And there you have it. Two sets of people that think very differently from one another, living together. Oh, interesting. And it's a lot harder to stay mad. And it's a lot harder to hate someone when they're right there in your face. When they loaned you their lawnmower or a cup of sugar, or they might happen to be really hot. The idea of them voting differently from you and that being a big problem and a barrier to your friendship and getting along and hanging out and having a good one and sharing a cold one over a fence or maybe barbecuing together or having a block party together. The idea of being divided when you know that person, when you see him every day, when you realize, they voted differently than me, but they're just trying to get through life the same way we all are. That prejudice kind of goes away, which I think is healthy. And you know what? You might love Trump, you might hate Trump, but there is something that's happening because of Donald Trump that I think is an incredibly positive thing. And that is these lines, these straight ticket Republicans, straight ticket Democrat types. Donald Trump has changed the dialogue to the point where people are no longer bound to the party of record in the same way. I read an article in the New York Times a little while ago. It's time to leave the GOP. Why we're leaving the GOP? A lot of folks that have been lifelong members of the GOP deciding under Trump, this is not for them. And the reasons why are kind of immaterial. It's just the willingness to do it that I find to be healthy. The willingness to take back some of the individualism, the willingness to leave some of the joiner mentality that seems to dominate America in such an unhealthy way. The willingness to leave that behind as you make a decision based on what's right in your heart and your mind seems to be incredibly valuable. And there's going to be angry Republicans saying, how could they leave the GOP? You bunch of rhinos, you fake Republicans, you Republicans in name only, you secret Democrats, you. But hey, if it makes you feel any better, it's not just limited to the Republicans. It's not just limited to the GOP. You know who John Tester is? He's a Democrat in Montana. And he's looking at a pretty difficult re-election. And he's been trying to attach himself to Trump's coattails. He took out full-page ads in newspapers across the state recently, welcoming the president ahead of his visit there this past week just gone by, thanking him for supporting some legislation. Trump won the state by 20 and was in Great Falls last week to support Tester's GOP challenger, Matt Rosendale. But there you go. There this Democrat is, recognizing that Trump, who was a Democrat until about 5 minutes before he announced his candidacy, had the hearts and minds of a lot of his potential voters. So what is he doing? He's kind of crossing party lines. He's coattail riding. He's on the dill's knack, as we used to say in hip-hop circles. Now, is this the purest motivation for crossing party lines? No, it isn't. The people that are bailing on the GOP because they can't handle Trump's policies, whatever the policy might be that they find to be the one that the straw that broke the camel's back and caused them to bail. Who knows? Who knows if they're righteous or not? Who knows if they're for political gain? But I do really love the fact that Donald Trump has upset the apple cart enough to where people are leaving tribalism at the door, leaving that limiting belief at the door, leaving that idea that because you sat with a group of kids at the lunch table on the first day of school, that that's who you are forever and for always at the door. Man, you know in your heart, you know in your mind, you know what's right, you know what's wrong. And you might be registered as something, you might be registered as another thing, and there's nothing wrong with that. But if we are to gain one positive thing from the Trump administration, I think it's that we've started to question. We've started to question leadership and authority more. And a lot of people would say, no, we're a bunch of mindless, brainwashed drones. Are we? I don't think we are. I think we are starting to question. We are starting to demand accountability. And we are starting to move forward in a way that will be very, very hard to undo in the coming years. And like it or not, love him or not, loathe him or not, a big part of the reason why that's the case, a big part of the reason why we're leaving our unquestioning faith, our knee-jerk reaction, our automatic vote at the door is because of Donald Trump. So if you're looking for a silver lining, there it is.
Sometimes you just know you're done. You're longing for that shining sun. You walk these streets most every day. You're waiting to get washed away. Radio.
Now, more AD on the radio.
Back once again, the ill behavior, delivering and giving you my musical savior. Back once again, it's your boy AD, and can't nobody rock a body better than me. Back once again, the ill behavior, delivering and giving you a musical savior. Back once again, it's your boy AD, and can't nobody rock a body better than me.
So it's finally happened. The prophecy foretold it. And yea, verily, it is now reality. The nerds have in fact inherited the earth. How do we know this? Well, the days of the Donald Trumps, pre-presidential Donald Trumps ruling the world, are, well, kind of fading off into obscurity. And we know this because of who the richest men on the planet are. They're not the old money investors. They're not the real estate moguls anymore. Who are they? We'll discuss who the 3 richest men on the face of the planet are in 2018 and what they all have in common in just a little bit. Right now, though, while nerds might have inherited the earth, there's still room for daredevils like Travis Pastrana. Do you remember when we had Travis Pastrana on the show? Oh man, please, if you get an opportunity, go back and listen to the podcast. He is one of the most stunningly entertaining people you've ever met in your life, just because he's so laid back about the things that he's done. Like, besides the fact that he's one of the greatest freestyle motocross riders of all time, he's done things like jump out of an airplane without a parachute. Yeah, he jumped out of an airplane without a parachute, got a parachute from someone in midair, and landed safely on Earth. And when we talked to him about it, he said, "Yeah, it's sort of a pass-fail thing." Do you remember that? Like I said, if you haven't heard it, please go back and listen to the interview, because he's one of the most truly enthralling people you've ever spoken to. But Travis Pastrana replicated 3 of Evel Knievel's most famous motorcycle jumps in Las Vegas this past weekend, just gone by. For his last jump, Travis jumped over the Caesars Palace fountain, the jump that Evel Knievel tried and missed.
I think this is going to be it, folks. Travis Pastrana, he will go! History has been made once again. Travis Pastrana did what the icon who inspired this all couldn't do. He just nailed the jump at Caesars Palace Fountain. And look at him burning up to celebrate. How are you feeling, buddy?
Man, it's just such an honor to live a day in Evel's footsteps, and it literally just boots. Thank you all for coming out. I mean, to be here in Las Vegas, so much of my history has been here. I proposed to my wife here, having first Nitro Circus show here. Thank you to everyone in history. Thank you for everyone watching, and thank you to all Knievel family for coming out. And this was definitely one of the coolest things, the coolest thing I've ever been able to do, and hopefully everyone enjoyed the show.
He's a truly incredible individual that is constantly pushing the boundaries of what human beings are capable of. If you get a chance to see Nitro Circus, his sort of like traveling road show, it's great stuff. The only problem is, if your kid is anything at all like I was when I was a kid, you see something like that and go, oh, cool. So I'm going to ride a lazy boy down a mega ramp and everything's going to be fine. Nothing good ever. I can't remember which comedian said it, but it's so true and basically sums up every time I jacked myself up really badly during childhood. Nothing good ever came from kids going, let's build a ramp. And if there's one thing Travis Pastrana will inspire you to do besides not accepting your human limitations, it's build a ramp. Oh man, the other thing that happened, there's a new season of Comedians in Cars Getting Coffee. So great. So freaking great. Zach Galifianakis is on the first episode of the new season of Comedians in Cars Getting Coffee. He talks a little bit with Jerry about whether or not it's okay to film celebrities in public without their permission.
You ever look at it as that's rude to take out your phone and to film someone without permission?
Not if you're a well-known person. I think you got to accept that.
What?
I'm out in public. There's no privacy out in public. That's why it's called public.
You're in a restaurant and someone's filming you there.
That's fine. Zach, nobody's interested. Nobody cares.
I'm not saying.
No one's going to watch it.
It's the principle of it, I guess.
Well, look, I am very big on etiquette and civility and
it seems
dignity.
like you would be that kind of guy. You always have that.
I am, but I don't see that as an incursion on my privacy or my dignity, or I don't find it rude.
Wonderful, because I have a show I want to pitch you called Celebrity Toilet Cams.
That coming to Netflix is one of the greatest things that happened to me all year. So, the times, well, they were a-changing. Now it looks as though they've officially changed. It used to be, in the past, to be part of this club of the richest people on the face of planet Earth. Your options were limited. You could be sort of a Donald Trump style person. For the longest time, real estate was the way that fortunes were made. There were a lot of people that tell you real estate was the only way to get rich, ultimately. And it's not that you can't make a killing in the world of real estate anymore, but there's something that's overtaken it. There used to be this idea that you had to be old money. Like your father had to have built the railway, or your great-great-great-grandfather had to have built the railway. Or decided, hey, I'm going to start making steel. I think people could maybe use steel or something of that nature. Or you had to be an old school investor. You had to be one of those people that was, there during the early days of boom and bust in the stock market and got in after the Great Depression. Your family had to have got in after the Great Depression. And to be one of the richest people on the face of planet Earth, you had to spend some time managing your family's estate. That used to be the case. But the playing field is more level now than it's ever been before, ever. Provided you're a bit of an egghead. Only because, did you see what happened? This is incredibly significant. The third richest person in the world, you know who that used to be? That used to be legendary investor Warren Buffett. Not so much. He's been overtaken by who? Unsurprisingly, Mark Zuckerberg. Facebook founder Mark Zuckerberg has overtaken Warren Buffett to become the world's third richest person. He's now worth $81.6 billion, about $373 million more than Buffett. It's crazy that $373 million is just one step up, by the way. But what does he have in common with the other richest people on the face of the planet? Well, Zuckerberg only trails Amazon's Jeff Bezos with $142 billion and Microsoft founder Bill Gates with $94.2 billion. And now, for the first time ever, the three richest people in the world do not come from old money, do not come from managing their family's portfolio because they blew up big after the Great Depression, do not come from the fact that their relatives got in on steel early. The three richest people on the planet all made their fortunes from technology, and they're all Americans. Interesting, right?
Leave the stimulation to the professionals.
Everyone is so smart.
KPRC, more stimulating talk radio.
There's something happening here, and you should know what it is.
The dumbing up of America. Now, more AD on the radio.
So are you any good at napping? This is a real question, serious question. Can you take a nap and have it work out for you? If you've listened to the show for any length of time, you know that sleep and the lack of it have been a lifelong difficulty for yours truly. I started having problems sleeping through the night probably when I was about 8, 9 years old. I had no problem staying asleep once I got to sleep, but I'd be up until sort of like 4 or 5 in the morning every single day, and that was a problem because, well, I had to wake up at like 7 or whenever the hell it was. I got through high school on Pepsi and NoDoz and about 2 hours of sleep a night, and then prolonged crashing periods over the weekend. Not a good way to go, but it basically set up the habits of a lifetime. Had problems sleeping forever. And now, as an adult, I don't have the same kind of problems getting to sleep because, well, I'm freaking exhausted all the time. My sleep problems lie in the workload. I don't mean to bore you with my troubles, but I'm on like 25 stations, and every single one of those stations has a boss, and every single one of those bosses, those program directors, want something from me, and every single one of those bosses and program directors doesn't care what the other 24 asked for and isn't cognizant of what the 24 asked for. So I'll often get to the end of the workday, open up my email inbox, and have a very long list of tasks I must accomplish before I'm allowed to get off to nappy land. And as a consequence, I don't sleep a whole lot. Sometimes 2.5 hours a night. Occasionally, if I'm really getting lucky, around 5. Usually more like 3 or 4. And then on the weekend, I just crash. It was an unhealthy habit that I started and one that I've maintained as an adult. Sometimes it was because of a lack of an ability to get to sleep. Other times it's just because of the workload. Right now it's because of the workload, and there's not a whole lot I can do about it. But I've often wondered what it would be like if I could be one of those people that power napped. I know these people that get 20 minutes. And I have 20 minutes in the middle of the day sometimes where there's not a million demands being made on my time. And if I could take an adequate power nap and be able to come out of it the other side feeling better, it might improve the quality of my life. I've never been able to do that. I always wind up feeling worse after a nap as opposed to better. So I figured that you and I could go over the elements of the perfect nap a little later on in the show. Maybe it'll improve my napping. Maybe it'll improve your napping. Maybe we'll all be better off and more well-rested because of it. Right now, though, let's you and I take a look at the events of today in our segment, My Witness News. Justin Bieber, the Biebs, is engaged. Justin Bieber and Haley Baldwin. I think which Baldwin brother's kid is that? Stephen Baldwin's? The guy who played Barney Rubble on the live action version of the Flintstones. Justin Bieber and Haley Baldwin, who I believe is a daughter of Stephen Baldwin, are engaged. I guess they dated before after being back together for just a month. A love like theirs only comes around once every regrettable tattoo. I wish those kids the best of luck. Congratulations to the folks behind Ant-Man and the Wasp. It won the weekend box office with an astonishing $76 million in ticket sales. I want to see it, but I can't see it. I'm so far behind on all those Marvel movies, which is crazy because I'm a giant nerd. I grew up reading comic books. I really have been waiting my entire life for movies and TV to catch up to what our minds wanted comic books to be when they hit the little and large screens. And I'm so far behind. I haven't seen Black Panther. I haven't seen Thor Ragnarok. That's how far back my non-watching of these movies goes. Haven't seen Black Panther. Haven't seen... Oh, yeah. So far behind. And now I can't watch any of them in the theater, and it's bumming me the hell out because these are not movies to watch at home, really. I mean, unless you've got one insane television set, you're never going to capture the glory and the grandeur of something like Black Panther on your phone. On the treadmill at the gym, but that's probably how I'm going to wind up watching it. I feel bad for that. So, yeah. Apparently it's great. I can't watch it. And you know what? The fact that I can't go see Ant-Man and the Wasp bugs me. Yeah, see what I did there? Happy birthday to Ringo Starr, who turned 78 years old on Saturday. So these days when he sings With a Little Help from My Friends, his friends, I would imagine, are Viagra pills. Brendan Urie, the lead singer of Panic at the Disco, has said that he's pansexual. Not entirely sure what that means, but just to be on the safe side when he comes over, I'm keeping him away from the cookware. O.J. Simpson turned 71 today. O.J. Simpson now spends his days looking for the real killers on his rascal scooter. Good for him. This is interesting. Oh, man. My Mets season is a horrible, awful, miserable. It's miserable. Yeah, that's how I would describe it. It's a miserable thing. There was every possibility. There are all the right ingredients with the New York Mets to have gone all the way this year, and their season just crumbled after this incredible start, after an unbelievable hot streak. The Mets season has just degenerated into a comedy of errors. It's gone horrifically wrong. And, well, this is not helping matters at all when it comes to people giving me a really hard time about the high comedy that is the Mets. But Jenry Mejia, New York Mets pitcher Jenry Mejia, he had a lifetime ban because of steroid use. He was popped for it like 3 different times, and they're like, you're banned from baseball for the rest of your natural life. However, New York Mets pitcher Jenry Mejia's lifetime ban has been lifted after just 2 years. Yeah, just 2 years. No word on when the Mets' 32-year ban on winning will end. But you know what? I love them when they win. I love them when they lose. I love the Mets. What am I going to do? Root for the Yankees? It's my dad's team. And I would, it's never easy. It's never been easy being a Mets fan. Not 1 second of it has been easy. I was lulled into a false sense of security because I became a Mets fan when I was 6 years old. When they won the World Series. People were like, were you a bandwagon jumper? I was like, yes, I was when I was 6. They won the World Series. And I grew up in England. All I knew was that my family was from New York. My dad's a Yankee fan, but baseball was a connection that I had with my father. My father was in a line of work where he had to travel an awful lot. So he was away from home more often than not. But when he did come back, our sort of bonding time was baseball. We played catch. I think the best childhood memories I have with my father were playing catch in the yard. It meant everything. And it wasn't so much playing catch. It wasn't the playing of the catch. It was the communication and the hanging out that we did while we were playing catch. It's interesting. The throwing back and forth of a ball lets your mind wander a little bit. Whether you have any aspiration that your kid play baseball, whether your kid has any aspiration to play baseball, playing catch in the backyard is, I think, an incredible way to, in a very subtle manner, deepen your relationship with your child. So, baseball was a big bonding thing for me and my dad. And all I knew was I was allowed to stay up late. Watching baseball games in England was really difficult because of the time difference, but it was the World Series and it was a big deal. And I knew that my family was from New York. My dad's a Yankee fan, like I said, but I knew my family was from New York, and it was a Boston Red Sox and the New York Mets. And so this New York team won in what was, at the time, possibly the greatest World Series in history. What might still be the greatest World Series in history. Absolutely incredible. And from there on in, I was hooked. It was the greatest thing in the world to be a Mets fan because they won. And there hasn't been a whole lot of that ever since. It's been very, very difficult. I was lulled into a false sense of security by watching people like Keith Hernandez and Darryl Strawberry as a wee strip of a lad do unbelievable things during the World Series. And it's something that I still get goosebumps talking about to this day. And I just can't do anything about that. I can't change the fact that I only have an emotional response to the Mets. I love the Houston Astros after having spent 10 years in Houston. I love the fact that they became a team the same year the New York Mets did. I love the fact that there's a lot of orange in the uniform, and I love the fact that they're not an easy team to be a fan of, but the people of Houston are big fans of the Astros. I knew that they were my team, my kind of team. When I moved to Houston, I turned on sports on TV, and I saw on the news the local newscasters say, and in sports, the Astros find a new way to lose. I knew that they were my team, that I was going to be able to get behind them and root for them when I saw that the people in Houston affectionately referred to them as the Lastros. So I love the Astros and I love it when they win, but there will never be the emotional pull on my heartstrings from any other team than my beloved New York Mets. So there you go. What you gonna do? Just accept the ridiculousness of the fact that Jenry Mejia, a source of tremendous shame when he got booted from baseball for life, is now back. There's talk that Hillary Clinton is secretly planning to run for president again in the year 2020. When Vladimir Putin heard the news, he was like, oh, cool, less work for us. Thanks to a surge in Facebook stock, we discussed this earlier, Mark Zuckerberg is now worth $81.6 billion. He's now the third richest person on Earth. No word on what Zuckerberg plans to do with his massive windfall, although I think it's probably safe to rule out updating his wardrobe. Maybe he's the third richest person on Earth because he saved a lot of cash by buying t-shirts, jeans, and hoodies from Old Navy or wherever they come from. And finally, in news, a historian claims that Jesus used marijuana. Yeah, a historian claims that Jesus was a fan of the wacky tobacco. A lot of people question that. I'm one of them. Only because if Jesus was a fan of marijuana, if that's true, why was the Last Supper not at Taco Bell? All right. Let's you and I talk about the power of a nap. I've always been a bad napper. I've had sleep problems my entire life, and there would be nothing better than being able to zonk out in the middle of the day for 20 minutes and feel better. But I always wake up from a nap feeling worse, not better. Maybe you're good at taking naps, maybe you're not. But I found this. I thought this was interesting. I'm going to give it a go. Maybe it'll help enrich your sleeping life as well. Here are the elements of a perfect nap, plus the strangest places people have taken one. There's really nothing that feels as amazing as taking a sweet, sweet nap. Occasionally, I've had one where I wake up feeling fantastic. I'm like, why can't it be that way all the time? Usually, I just wake up feeling more sleepy than when I lay down. But apparently, there is nothing more refreshing than a nap taken well, even if you have to do it while you're sitting on the toilet in the office bathroom. Yeah, new survey asks people to name the elements of a perfect nap. Here are the things that we should be looking for. The perfect nap apparently comes after a meal or exercising. So it's good if you've done a little exercise, if your heart rate's up, or if you've just had something to eat and you got something in your belly. These things will both serve to calm you down. Then you need to be in a dark, cool room with a blanket and one pillow. These are the elements of a perfect nap. And a pet as well. I got to tell you, when Millhouse conks out next to me on the bed, there's something unbelievably relaxing about it. When I see Millhouse conked out on the bed, when I see my puppy conked out on the bed, it makes me more relaxed. And apparently the other element of a perfect nap is that it has to last longer than 20 minutes. But if you can't make all these things happen, most people will just grab whatever nap that they can. Here are some of the strangest places people say they've taken naps. In an abandoned chemical plant. Standing up on the subway. I've fallen asleep on the subway. I don't know if that counts as a nap. I fell asleep on the subway and I woke up, and fortunately I hadn't missed my stop and no one had done anything untoward to me, but I don't know if that counts as a nap. That just counts as falling asleep on the subway. But sometimes you do get lulled to sleep by the clickety clicks of the wheels and the motion and all of the above. Other odd places people have taken a nap: in a coal mine, in a barrel, in a drive-through waiting line for waiting for food, in their trunk, on a ski lift, while riding a horse, and at a funeral. There you go. The elements of a perfect nap. I'll be back tomorrow. We'll do it all over again. I'm off to try and have a little snooze. Later.